Hello and welcome to Original Soundchat, where video game music is a work of art. On each episode, it's our goal to help you learn about two soundtracks from the world of games, as well as the people, stories, and critical tracks behind them. My name is Peter Spezia, and we're brought to you by Anonymous Dinosaur and Rhymes with Asia. It's time to appreciate great OSTs and the games that they come from without getting too bogged down in music theory. This week's game on this solo episode is the continuation of Aloy's journey to save a post-apocalyptic world, as she needs to recover the pieces of an AI while discovering she's not alone in her quest. 2022's Horizon Forbidden West. My co-host Joe DeVader helped me out big time last week by taking over for a solo episode, just returning the favor this week. Joe is also very busy, not only with work and life things, but also going through Theatrhythm Final Bar Line a whole lot. You can go check out his review over at Nintendo World Report. He gave that quite a nice score there. A lot of meat to that game, and it sounds like he just about 100%ed that game. He'll get to talk more about that when he's back next week. Also, I think he's working on some more Fire Emblem Engage. What am I playing, though? I beat Metroid Prime Remastered. That was a nice little surprise, wasn't it, from that Nintendo Direct? I mean, a game that we knew existed in some form, but it was nice to get the digital shadow drop at least. And wow, what an amazing effort from remaking that game visually from the ground up over at Retro. But it's the same game, and Metroid Prime is one of the GameCube classics for sure. Still holds up today. A couple things need to be patched, I think. Give us a couple more control options. The dual stick and trigger controls are phenomenal, really helps modernize the game, but there are a couple button combinations that could be better. Maybe customize what the left bumper can do, because I don't think I used that the whole game. Maybe give us an option there. Like, super missiles are really tedious when you have to do the right trigger, the ZR button, and then also the right bumper for missiles. It's kind of a mess. Also, changing beams, a little weird in that. So give us a little more control options, and I think it's just perfect and flawless. It's just an amazing game. I am also right before the final boss in Hi-Fi Rush. That's also a nice surprise this year over from Tango Softworks over at Bethesda. Yeah, the Evil Within makers, to have them do basically a game it's Devil May Cry meets a rhythm game. Rhythmic combat and a character action game. Whole lot of fun. Nice characters, nice kind of setup for an IP. A fun little short game. I really am enjoying my time with it. And the soundtrack, I think, could be a standout. Possibly top 10 best of 2023 at the end of the year. Also making some more progress in Persona 5 Strikers. I am just about into jail number 6. We're in Osaka. We're doing some exploration before that all goes down. So, yeah, really enjoying that so far. Fun little muso to continue the Persona 5 story. We were going to talk about games this week, had this pair together where the protagonists were going west. And so we'll have to save Joe's game for another time, just like my game last week with Composer Health will also need to be saved for another time. A more straightforward theme between those two games if you pair them together, but we will have to see how that goes. For now, though, let's get into the game that I was going to bring up all along this week, because it only makes sense for me to talk about Horizon Forbidden West. Not the first time we've brought up a Horizon game on this show. Talked about Horizon Zero Dawn on episode 80, where we talked about composer Joris de Man. But Horizon Forbidden West is the sequel to Zero Dawn, and it released February 18th, 2022 for PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5. So we just passed the 1-year anniversary on the game. The game is sure to come to PC at some point, but that time is just not now. Horizon Forbidden West, though, was also just recently revealed to be one of the next additions to the PlayStation Plus's game catalog. If you have that extra level of subscription that gets you access to the expanded set of games. Although, if you're trying to buy the game outright, it was kind of one of the last games to have the free upgrade to a PlayStation 5 version on Sony's side of things, so make sure you do buy the PS4 version and get the free PS5 upgrade because it's one of the last games that you can do that with. Horizon Forbidden West is developed by Guerrilla Games and published by Sony Interactive Entertainment. What is it? Like many Sony franchises, I feel like these days it's the ever successful and popular third-person open-world action RPG. Continuing off of Horizon Zero Dawn, robot dinosaurs is a common buzzword for the franchise, but it's more like mechanized animals. Anyway, you deal with these mechanized creatures with a bow. You have different types of arrows, or you're setting trip mines or explosives, and you also have a spear for melee attacks. There's stealth, looting, crafting, you have armor pieces, you get experience points that go into leveling up with a skill tree, and you have dialogue choices. It's really straightforward in a cobbling of all these different things that come with the genre. It just has a really nice polish to everything. And you can also climb very tall giraffe-like creatures as observation points. So you even get the Ubisoft map towers in there as well. New to this game is underwater exploration, more freedom in climbing, a glider for slow descents, a polecaster or a grappling hook for zipping around to different points, easier enemy scanning, melee improvements like new combos, resonator blasts from your spear, and limit break-like super moves called Valor Surges, and so much more. So, the story of Horizon Forbidden West, it assumes that you know the big plot points that were revealed in Horizon Zero Dawn. So, it's the 31st century on Earth in the middle of a post-apocalyptic United States, after tech magnate Ted Faro lost control of his automated peacekeeper military robots in 2064. The robots, which could self-replicate and consume biomass, overran the planet and consumed the biosphere, stripping Earth of life. Zero Dawn, a project spearheaded by scientist Elizabeth Sobek, was initiated to create an automated terraforming system to deactivate the robots and restore life to Earth. As the overarching AI known as Gaia oversaw the successful restoration of life on Earth through the process of the Zero Dawn project, a mysterious signal turned Gaia's subordinate functions into AIs themselves in the year 3020. One of them, the erstwhile extinction failsafe protocol, Hades, attempted to seize control of Zero Dawn to again end all life. Gaia resorted to self-destructing to fend it off. In hopes of stopping Hades, as well as being eventually rebuilt and rebooted, Gaia created a clone of its creator, Dr. Elizabeth Sobek, who would have access privileges to use the system's master override to purge Hades and defeat it. That clone is the huntress from the Nora tribe known as Aloy. So Aloy goes through this whole journey of self and world discovery and defeats Hades, and that was Horizon Zero Dawn. Forbidden West picks up 6 months after that climactic battle. Aloy has been searching fruitlessly for a working backup of Gaia, because the planet's biosphere is still rapidly degrading. After getting a tip that a backup exists in the Forbidden West of the land, surrounded by the brewing civil war in the Tanakh tribe, Aloy recovers a Gaia backup that is without its subsystems. Unfortunately, she is interrupted by a group of futuristic humans that possess advanced technology that renders them invulnerable, as they take a second backup while Aloy barely escapes. In order to save Earth's biosphere, Aloy has to recover as many of Gaia's subfunctions as possible, which will involve forging alliances with the different tribes across the land, before trying to capture Hephaestus, the heart of the forge that produces the machines. Big questions here. Can Aloy restore Gaia and save the biosphere? Who are these futuristic humans? What do they want on Earth? And why do they have another clone of Elizabeth Sobek with them? And what are the true origins of the mysterious signal that caused all of these 31st century problems? Here's where I would ask Joe, what are your experiences with Horizon Forbidden West? So I guess the question is going to be turned back to me. What are my experiences with the game? love Horizon as a franchise. Really enjoyed it. Loved playing the first game. Though I bought and never played the Frozen Wilds DLC because I feel like at that time it was too long since I played Horizon Zero Dawn, pretty close to launch, I think. I'm trying to remember how that all timed out. What did I play first? Was it that or Breath of the Wild? I think I played Horizon Zero Dawn after Breath of the Wild in 2017. And then it was Persona 5 right out. It was back. 2017. What a year for games, man. But I did play Forbidden West at launch. It's a PlayStation 5 showpiece if you have one, and it's certainly worth it to play the game there. I feel like it's a gorgeous game. It's one of the best looking games out there, and they improved so much over Zero Dawn. But it's one of those things where we'll get to talking about it later. But, for that game to be released so close to another industry-defining game like Elden Ring, that's just so tough. So tough, right? So, it's a game that I really enjoyed. I have thoughts on it and how its story is structured. The end comes together in an interesting way, but it's a really fun game. And if you like those kind of open world action adventure games, like Horizon's a must. You can't miss. Just make sure you're good at your arrow shooting, because a lot of arrows, of course, a lot of melee and stealth and all that, but you gotta be good with the bow. And that really helps, especially if you're playing on the harder difficulties. So, the development of Horizon Forbidden West begins with Guerrilla Games starting development in 2018, a year after its predecessor, Horizon Zero Dawn, was released. Using the PlayStation 4 as a foundation, but imagining the potential of a PlayStation 5, the then future platform allowed for advanced haptic feedback, 3D spatial audio, enhanced lighting, special water rendering, improved visual effects, and reduced loading times. So it's definitely worth it to play it on PlayStation 5 if you can. They also brought in some strong acting chops for some of these newer characters. Of course, Ashley Birch, Lance Reddick, and John Hopkins reprised their roles as Aloy, Silence, and Erend, respectively. But Angela Bassett plays the Tenakth rebel known as Regala, and Carrie-Anne Moss plays the futuristic human known as Tilda. I feel like one of the biggest accomplishments, and one of the things that I'm sure Guerrilla took to heart about Horizon Zero Dawn, was, like a couple other games in 2017, it was a game that was kind of plagued by these algorithmic conversations between characters where the animation just kind of looked stodgy and stock and didn't really look like it flowed well with the conversation. I'm looking at you, Mass Effect Andromeda, as another example. But it was a point that people pointed out. It's like, yeah, I know you've got a lot going on in this big RPG, but maybe you ran out of time to be able to polish this up. Well, in Forbidden West, that is totally fixed. It is really amazing what they did, and like every NPC, at least that you're talking to, just looks so good. There's so much polish in this game, and it's a well improved sequel. And it's worth pointing out that like one of the biggest critique points they really shined that up nicely. Horizon Forbidden West was announced during Sony's PlayStation 5 reveal event. That was in June 2020, with a planned release in 2021. Well, gameplay was first shown in a May 2021 State of Play presentation, where the game was targeting a late 2021 release. But development was partly impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic, as the team was having trouble getting access to performance capture and talent. Ultimately, the game was delayed once to its final February 2022 release. And it reviewed very well, with a Metacritic average of 88 on PS5 and 83 on PS4. It was praised for its visuals, its combat, its vocal performances, and technical advancements, while the writing and open world design drew some mixed responses. Also, a big critique of this game: how is there no auto loot? There are so many times where you're running through the world and you have to stop to press triangle to pick up some plants, or you got to stop and hold to do a chest search. It just breaks up a lot of the flow. It's probably, I would say, if for this sequel, that's the big critique on this one. And again, it was an issue in the first game too, but you fixed all these things, and yet there needs to be a smoother way just to loot all these things, because they did a great job with managing the inventory with like chests at a campfire save point. So it was a way that like you weren't having a full inventory. You can have it go automatically there. Great stuff there, but too much stopping to loot, and that kind of breaks up the flow. And that's probably I'd say the biggest gameplay issue with the game. But a reviewer noted that, quote, the mantra for Horizon Forbidden West development appears to be make everything bigger, better, and more beautiful. And let's be honest, I think it's amazing that the game even runs on PlayStation 4, but it really just shines on PS5. The game sold well, but not well enough yet for Sony to brag about sales numbers quite yet, so maybe it hasn't hit 10 million. Honestly, this is getting tougher and tougher to figure out as game sales become more and more digital. Supposedly 50% of the launch sales were digital, and those aren't easily counted, but it was the 4th best-selling game in the UK in 2022. So, yeah, the game sold well. I think there's no concern about that or the franchise's future. Though, once again, like in 2017, Horizon Forbidden West was released a week before a video game that changed the industry. Like Zero Dawn released right before The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, Horizon Forbidden West was the bridesmaid to Elden Ring's bride. There's also another easy comparison to another SIE action-adventure sequel in God of War Ragnarok that released at the end of 2022. So when you're talking about all the big award shows, it was nominated 7 times at the Game Awards, including for Game of the Year, but it didn't win anything. It's nominated 8 times at the DICE Awards for Game of the Year, Game Direction, Animation, Art Direction, Character, Original Music Composition, Technical Achievement, and Adventure Game of the Year. The award show is in a few days, on February 24th, so we'll see if it wins anything. Also, it was recently nominated for 11 awards from Gang, and that award show's on March 23rd. The BAFTA nominees, if you're wondering, those happen in early March, with the award show usually happening in early April, so still early to tell yet there. The Legacy of Horizon Forbidden West, a DLC expansion titled Burning Shores, will be released exclusively for the PlayStation 5 on April 19th, 2023, in which Aloy must explore Los Angeles and deal with a sinister threat. It was part of the map that you couldn't get to, and it's interesting that they're having it be PS5 only, so I guess they can really unlock the full potential of what you can do there without feeling hampered by PS4. The franchise is rapidly expanding, though. Horizon Call of the Mountain is a PlayStation VR 2 launch game, and it's out tomorrow. There's also a Horizon TV series that is in production for Netflix. Currently, it's rumored to be called Horizon 2074, so maybe it goes back into like the Ted Faro days and the Fallout there. Who knows? It's too early to tell, but yeah, a Horizon TV series. And then finally, a PS5 remaster of Horizon Zero Dawn to get the original game up to technical speed with its sequel and probably capitalize on the TV series, much like what's going on right now with The Last of Us and last year's Part 1 game. That's rumored to be in development. Hasn't been announced, but yeah, we could see that coming, I would say, in the next couple years or so. And then I would imagine that a third Horizon game to kind of round out the trilogy that this second game certainly sets up for, that's got to be starting development probably years away from that. So the future is bright for the Horizon franchise. The composer that we'll highlight today for Horizon Forbidden West, his name is Oleksa Lozowchuk. And Oleksa Lozowchuk was born in 1976. He seems to be based in Canada. He comes from a musical family where his mom was a music teacher while he and his siblings played various instruments, so there was a lot of singing and playing music going on at home, and that was just a normal part of life. He started off with classical violin at age 3, and along the way he taught himself to play piano and whatever other instruments he could pick up. He played euphonium and percussion in his high school band, and he was part of an indie rock band called The Family Dog, where he discovered his love for production. In fact, he even produced a folk pop album called Vatra for his cousin Tamara in 1995. Tamara? Tamara? I'm only realizing now that looking at that name, there are several ways that you can pronounce that. Tamara is the first one that goes for me and my experience. So he got a bachelor's degree in film production. That's something I can relate to well. But then he moved to Montreal to get a master's in cinema, all while continuing with music production on different albums, also scoring films and producing his own films. He's inspired by, quote, pretty much anything that is full of life, death, beauty, or evokes stillness. He got his break in the game industry by initially working with the Vancouver Symphony on music for the Olympics. A colleague there was part of the startup called Blue Castle Games, and they were in need of someone to help their audio department. So Blue Castle would eventually become Capcom Vancouver, and they would become the Dead Rising team after the original game. In April 2018, he co-founded and he's the creative director of Interleave, a super collaborative team of award-winning music and audio professionals. And you can find him on Twitter at Oleksa Lozowchuk. That's Oleksa Lozowchuk. Oleksa Lozowchuk's discography includes games such as The Bigs and The Bigs 2, Dead Rising 2, 3, and 4, as well as Puzzle Fighter. He worked on FIFA 20 and FIFA 21, and of course, Horizon Forbidden West. There are a lot of film and TV projects on his discography, though not many I recognized, though one of the latest ones seems to be Netflix's Julie and the Phantoms. And his own music includes 2003's classical chamber album, Bright Sadness, which you can listen to now on Spotify. The music development for Horizon Forbidden West involves music composed by Oleksa Lozowchuk, Joris de Man, The Flight, Niels Vanderleest, and Lovisa Bergdahl. There are featured performances by Julie Elvin, Melissa R. Kaplan, Ariana Gillis, Lovisa Bergdahl, and Musica Intima. It was interesting that Oleksa Lozowchuk was the composer that was brought into the Forbidden West project into a team that already knew each other from Horizon Zero Dawn and the Frozen Wilds. So they talk about it in this documentary that they shot, this short little feature of how it's almost like a piece of pizza fitting into a bigger pie. And that was Lozowchuk right in there, where he says, quote, Horizon has an inspiring musical palette, which is a unique blend of human voices, acoustic instruments, organic textures, string octets, rare flutes, tribal percussion, and various synths. Add to this a moving story and strong characters who need emotional resonance from memorable melodies and engaging harmonies and clusters, alongside much grit and edge, and voila, you have a dream gig for any composer. And so that's his thought going into this franchise. And what's new for the game? Well, of course, there are a bunch of different percussion and strings that were tried, especially when you have to represent this new Tenakth tribe. In fact, Joe Henson of The Flight noted that their approach was, quote, if we lived in that world and we found this instrument, but we didn't know how you played it, what would you do? So you're doing things like you're tapping guitar strings instead of necessarily strumming it, or doing different things like hitting harp strings, just different ways that you could play these different instruments to represent this world of Horizon. The new sound engine for the game, though, allowed for more exploration of emotions. So basically considering what Aloy would be feeling in a certain story arc or moment, and then this would allow the music to shift in a way that represents that. They also considered the idle, engaged, and vigorous states of what actions Aloy would be doing. And then you also have different stem varieties. So what this would allow is for considering these different options of what's the emotion, what's the state that Aloy is doing, and then how do we want to break it down with instruments. And so it would allow the music to flow dynamically in the game based on what's going on. And it works just super well. And you can hear on the different tracks on the soundtrack how some of those various states are at play, and you kind of hear how it can flow. It's super, super cool. The team released a 4-track The Isle of Spires EP before the launch of the game, And while the official soundtrack rolled out over time in different volumes, it has up to 6 discs worth of music. Though ultimately, the soundtrack I gave a listen to, I guess, was ultimately like the first disc of these 6 discs. And I feel like you could even just encapsulate the whole game right into there. So listening to the music and picking the 5 critical tracks for Horizon Forbidden West was an interesting process. But I think I did a pretty okay job in highlighting some of these tracks. Of course, critical track number 1, we have to start with this one. This is Aloy's theme, Forbidden West. This piece is composed by Joris de Man, with vocals by Julie Elven. And one of the things that I think Horizon Zero Dawn did so well right from the beginning, establishing a new IP, was creating the sound for this main theme that just has this hauntingly beautiful melody that captures the beauty of the world, but also the sorrow of time and life lost, but a rebuilding and a drive to save this new incarnation of the world. And so capturing this in Julie Elven's vocal melody right away from the beginning of the franchise was amazing. And how do you buff that up for Forbidden West, where you're going into a new environment to take on new challenges and also have the bigger challenge of saving the world just becomes that much more difficult? That's right there here in this song with the Forbidden West version of Aloy's theme. And I feel like that's just enhanced the grander scale of instruments, right? I mean, you hear the bass just is incredible. And the synths that are at play, of course, Julie Elven's performance still continues to be amazing. But make it bigger and better. And that's the way that you hear this song on the title screen, the main menu theme as you're loading up the game. I mean, you're reminded of this melody that just defines the Horizon franchise. It had to be here. It's kind of a repeat of when we talked about the game for Zero Dawn on episode 80 of the show. But again, gotta be here every time you boot up the game for sure. Number 2 on the Critical 5 is actually a track that I feel like has stood out specifically from this game, though. And this track is titled In the Flood.
If I'm broken, if I'm torn, the wave inside my soul carries all I know. Who can take my hand in the flood?
Ariana Gillis's vocals carry a piece composed by Oleksa Lozowchuk and Lovisa Bergdahl. And if there's one narrative theme I think that goes into and extending beyond Horizon Forbidden West, it's the idea that Aloy feels like she has to do this alone. It's her burden to save the world because she is the clone of Elizabeth Sobek. And anyone else will just get in the way. And this game really is all about learning how to accept help from friends, that friendship is going to be what truly saves humanity and saves us all in the end. But this is really carried in this opening credits piece from the lyrics of "Who will take my hand in the flood?" And it's got to be Aloy's friends, kind of overcoming that solitude to understand where she can go with the help of others. And so this piece is played, the whole 3 minutes of it is played through this opening credits sequence that I think is awfully bold. I mean, you get a little bit into the game as you start to push into the Forbidden West, and it's this 3 minute beautiful opening credits sequence that shows the majesty of the world and Aloy going through it, whether it's desert environments or snowy mountaintops and the machines that go through it. It's great. And it really has this piece stand out musically because you're listening to it and just enraptured by Ariana Gillis's performance vocally. And yeah, it's a good way to start out the game. I don't think too many games go for an opening credits sequence quite like this. And so it makes it memorable. And it's a good song that I feel like has really stood out from the rest on the soundtrack. We dive more into the emotions and the different states of Aloy's actions. And this is represented well, I think, in this track. Critical track number 3 on the 5 critical tracks for Horizon Forbidden West. This one is The World on Her Shoulders. This piece is composed by Joris de Man, and it seems to play during different climbing sequences. Different comments out there seem to say, like, I can't exactly remember if there's a specific moment that this plays, but I feel like this is a track that really sticks with you if you've played the game. Maybe you've played the game and you're listening to this like, oh, I recognize this. Like, this really stands out. And to me, that was kind of where I was with it. Listening to the soundtrack, I'm like, oh, I don't know where this is from, but I feel like this is emblematic of a lot of, especially early on in the game, and you're feeling the weight of Aloy's journey and what she has to carry here. So this track really stood out to me. I'm like, this has to go on their Critical 5 somewhere, but I can't exactly peg where it's from. Though learning more about the music development, it does make sense that when you're talking about the emotions that Aloy's feeling, you have that kind of weighted burden. And then how do you kind of route it through what's the action here? Well, this is probably more of the engaged action. Like, you're probably climbing, you're doing something, not as active as, the intensive battle music, but not necessarily the idle exploration theme either. So you're engaged here. And so that's kind of where it feels like this part of the track is kind of routed down in that emotion engine. But it's really interesting because it feels like with all the instruments going here, like you have the flutes, you have the tap strings, you have the vocals, you've got some nice deep bass in there. Like, this is, I think, like quintessential instrumentation in the Horizon world. And it's neat to hear all these elements at play. Not an intensive action heavy piece, but a really good atmosphere when you're feeling engaged in what you're doing on certain missions. And I feel like this one really stood out. The World on Her Shoulders, also so representative of what Aloy is going through on her journey. Up next on the Critical 5, though, let's get into some battle music. And this one's a fun one. I like this one a lot. Number 4 here. This one is Guardian of the Deep. I believe it's in the Las Vegas section of the game is when you take on a Tide Ripper. And a Tide Ripper is a mechanized animal based on a plesiosaur. So the theme Guardian of the Deep is composed by Oleksa Lozowchuk, and it's music for the battle with this monster that is based in the water. And for all of the underwater diving and all that you do on this Vegas mission, of course, new to Forbidden West. So a water monster would also be new for the game. And it's neat to hear a kind of breath of fresh air, I think, with this battle track that really stands out. Early on in the piece is where this clip comes from, and you hear the rising chord action just gets you excited for the battle. You get the dooga 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 with the the synths that kind of work into that, showing like that's the mechanized future monster there with the Tide Ripper. And then the frantic strings almost come in, and it feels like, in a way, like Aloy is having a bit of fun with this. Like, yeah, of course there's danger of a new beast, but there's a bit of whimsy and fun here. And it's just really a delight to listen to. So it's nice to hear Lozowchuk's work there. Probably one of the boss battle themes that stand out the most, I would say, in this game, because it's not so dark and heavy, but there's just a light fun to it, especially after you're having all these water encounters, which is, again, new to the franchise. Though I have to add another boss piece to round out the Critical 5, and of course this kind of closes the book narratively a little bit, but this track is called Second Chance. So without going into spoilers really or anything, this I believe is the final boss track, and it's really dealing with the culmination of these futuristic humans and the repercussions of their actions and what they're doing here on Earth. And so that's why I feel like you're hearing a lot of these darker, heavier synths, because it's really the danger, not only the danger that's here, but the danger that is impending. And it's just a really daunting piece. The themes for Aloy and also for the character that you are fighting in this final boss battle, I believe, get mixed into this piece. I don't think it's really in the clip, but yeah, for a final boss theme that, okay, the battle it's okay. It's an okay battle. It leaves the game in a interesting narrative position, I suppose, but it's nice to hear this one because it's composed by The Flight, the duo of Alexis Smith and Joe Henson, and you feel the dark danger here with this one, different than every other piece here on the Critical 5, but really setting the franchise up for the direction that it's going to go in for the eventual third game. And I feel like that's important to discuss and bring up as another texture that I'm sure for a third game, you're going to have to deal with some heavy things, some heavier synths being worked more into a beautiful world of people and tribes that are making their way for themselves. It's going to be interesting to hear the direction that gets pushed in, but this game left on this kind of note is really an interesting one, a good midpoint for the trilogy. A couple tracks I have here that are on the cutting room floor. Wanted to put here in the Critical 5, but just couldn't, but also worth the mention. The first of these is called Built to Kill. This is another boss battle track that's composed by Oleksa Lozowchuk, and this is for the battle against the Slaughter Spine, or the Spinosaurus-inspired machine. And for this one, it's one of the more dangerous monsters, I would say. If the Thunderjaw, the T-Rex, was like the big bad monster in the first game, I would say that the Slaughter Spine is probably another one that is kind of up there in that echelon. And so it's nice to hear this track really represent the danger that Aloy is feeling, but also that she's definitely in the vigorous state, the battle-intensive state here with this music. And just hear like the dun-dun-dun-dun-dun-dun-dun is kind of like the rhythm of the mechanical beast there, and that's really neat to hear. Just another battle piece with higher stakes, higher danger with this one, and is a nice comparison point to the Tide Ripper battle. But I feel like that one with Guardian of the Deep was just more fun, and I think that's why I gave that one the edge for the Critical 5, but this is still a good one, and I think worthy of the cutting room floor. The other one is more of a softer, beautiful piece that plays at a nice key moment, and this one is called No Footfalls to Follow. Amidst all the overgrown nature and these mechanical monsters that are kind of on a rampage, there is still so much simple beauty in this world of Horizon. And a moment that represents that so well is in that Las Vegas section of the game where you're flying on a hot air balloon and just kind of enjoying the beauty there. A mission that was all about, let's find these things that create images in the sky, and it's fireworks. It's things that, we take for granted, I guess, today, but in a future society that has kind of lost all knowledge of 1,000 years before, like, what could this be? And let's find these ruins, and what's this? It's one of the nicer missions in the game, I think, with that Vegas section, and for this piece to kind of punctuate the experience at the end with the hot air balloon ride. Just gorgeous instrumentation here to, again, show the range of what's done here. And that little percussion of the little, almost like rain effect. It's not rain, but that instrument hit there. It's just, it's so calming. It's so soothing. And wow, beautiful music here on top of already gorgeous pieces that we've heard. What a soundtrack for Horizon Forbidden West. What will I never forget about the game, though? I couldn't help but think when going through the game and you're meeting all these friends and kind of doing these loyalty quests with them and building your team of friends that you thought you could do it before, but you know what? Let's make some friends. Let's forge these alliances to get these sub-function parts and really build this team together. You go back to your base and have conversations with them and get to know them more. And it's like, this feels a lot like Mass Effect 2, right? Like you're building this squad and learning about them and getting close to them. And then the end of the game happens. And let's put it this way, how you set up for a third game where there's a bigger threat out there that you did not really know about before, sure feels Reaper-like. And so, that's the direction that the third game will go into. And I'm going to be really interested to see how the Burning Shores DLC is going to grapple or wrestle with that, if at all, how that's going to handle. I'm really looking forward to playing Burning Shores, obviously. I think Forbidden West is still installed on my PS5, which is saying something because if you don't have any expanded storage there, space on that system is at a bit of a premium, but you know what? It's a game that I really enjoyed playing and can't wait to dive into more, and happy to see this franchise expand more. Well, that's enough about me rattling on about Horizon Forbidden West and its soundtrack, and that will do it for the show this week. You can find me on Twitter at PeteSpeakEasy. My co-host Joe DeVader is over at String Pixel. The video version of the show is on the Rhymes with Asia YouTube channel, but it's that MP3 podcast version that you want, and that's hosted by Anonymous Dinosaur at anondino.squarespace.com. That's where Joe's other podcast, Smasherpieces, is hosted, and you can find Smasherpieces and original Soundchat wherever you get your podcasts on catchers all around the globe. That's Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, even on Spotify, and we also have a Spotify playlist there, not only with a podcast feed of episodes, but we have a playlist of video game music tracks, and if we talk about a game music track on this show, and it's on Spotify, it gets added to this big monster playlist of video game music. Horizon Forbidden West is on Spotify, so those tracks will be added to the playlist. When you're done listening, you can find the show on social media at Soundchat OST, where you can leave some feedback for us. How did we do with this episode? What songs would you have put in the Critical 5? Give us some feedback there. Also, give us some suggestions for games to cover in the future as we continue to round out our 2023 schedule of episodes. Next week, Joe will be talking about Cassie Way, and I will be talking about Sky Lewin. It'll be good to have us back for another episode with both of us there, but it's also good to have these solo episodes. It gives us a nice little break for sure. All right, to play us out, I obviously had to find a cover of In the Flood. I mean, it's the track that I think stands out specifically from this game, and it turns out that Rachel Hardy on YouTube brought in Anna Gold to help her, but did this nice cover of In the Flood on her YouTube channel, and I really enjoyed it, and I think you will too. So please enjoy that. Thank you so much for listening this week on Original Soundchat. We'll see you next time. Take care.
If I'm broken, if I'm torn, the wave inside my soul